The stock market is closed today. We only have a 4-day week, and guess what? There is a lot packed into those 4 days, concluding on Friday with OPEX, GDP, PCE, and it is going to be explosive because the market is teetering on falling over. We know we're due for correction. What's going to happen this week? Let's take a look at it in today's Monday setup. The data again, as I said, we are closed today on Monday for President's Day, and then we head over to Tuesday. Not much doing here. We are going to have two Fed speakers. Just pay attention to what they're saying, if they're going to give any clues in terms of what's going to happen with Fed policy. When we come over to Wednesday, we do get quite a bit of data that's going to come through here. We're going to get building permits. We are going to get durable goods, and we are going to get housing starts. That's all going to drop at 8:30 a.m., so be prepared for that. And let's just scroll down and see if we have anything else on Wednesday. Yes, we do. We have the FOMC minutes that are going to be dropping at 2 p.m., so be ready for that. Remember, there is no Fed meeting or rate decision this month. That will occur in March, so be prepared for that. And it'll be interesting in March to see if Powell talks about Kevin Warsh being named as his successor. So we're going to have to wait and see. And then on Thursday, we are going to get more Fed speakers. We've got Bowman. We've got Bostic. Do we have anybody else? Not that I can see here right off the top, but let's scroll down and see what else we have. Oh, we have Kashkari, who is historically been pretty hawkish in terms of his stance on monetary policy. So can't imagine him saying anything dovish there on Thursday. And then that will do it for Thursday. And then Friday is the big day because we have PCE that is going to drop. We have GDP that is going to drop. We have personal income. We have personal spending. What else do we have? Do you have anything else on here? If it isn't enough, we also have the Supreme Court opinions that are going to be launched here on the 20th, and its options expiration. So in 4 days, we are compressing so much juice into this week that we're going to get some movement out of this. Be ready. And then next week, we get NVIDIA earnings. These next 2 weeks are going to be critical in terms of what the market is going to do. Now let's jump into the charts. Here we go. We're beginning with the SPX. This is what I love to follow in terms of seeing what's going to happen in the broader markets. And you can see that on Friday, we had this indecision candle. We broke down below that 100, got bought back up, but there's indecision right now in terms of what to expect from this market. You could see that we are sitting on thin support here at the 100, which lines up with these volume nodes, but a breakdown below 68.05. There's not much holding this thing up, and we can drop pretty hard. And where would we be looking for support? Watch this 200 daily simple moving average right here around 65.05. And if you're wondering where a 10% correction would be, that would be down here at 63.0418. So just keep an eye on that. We're seeing the momentum start to fade here on the RSI. We're seeing the bear volume continue to range higher. And one scenario I'm watching for is to see if this week we get the market sell down, if it drops, because we've really just been moving sideways since October, since the highs we made. We tapped 7,000. So maybe we get something similar to the August 2004 flash crash. I copied those candle pattern from August 2024 and overlaid it here from the all-time high. And you can see that would take us down below 10%. But if we do get that big flush that happens fast, then the market might be able to turn very quickly, because what happens on February 25th? Yes, NVIDIA earnings. So we might get that shakeout, that flush this week into the start of next week, and then NVIDIA earnings could be that catalyst to push us higher. But the market clearly shows that it's ready to roll over. Now, the low from the previous week held, and we would need to take that out in order to come lower. Looks like that's going to happen. But notice that we put in a higher low. So there's still weakness here. There's nothing that says that we're about to rip, and we need this flush in order to continue up on our next leg higher. Taking a look at the Qs, sideways since October, and now we have a double top pattern, higher high, lower high. We are below the 100. It tried to rally, push back up, got rejected by the 50 and the 20 EMAs, back down below the 10 and the 100. And it looks like it's coming down here for this 200. simple moving average on the daily at 581.25. In order to get a 10% correction, we got to come down 573.18. And if it gets below that, there could be a free fall. Now, if we come over here to the weekly, you could see that we do have this 50 SMA support at 561.71. And then you have the 100 SMA weekly at 522.70. So we could potentially see a pretty significant fall here, bear volume picking up. The Qs have just been weak here as of late. Taking a look at Bitcoin, it continues to be a laggard. It continues to struggle. We saw that this big bullish candle came in after the huge sell-off on February 5th, but we've just been moving sideways and it looks like it wants to roll over more. So watch for a breakdown to 58 to 56,000 before buyers would step in, but it doesn't look like we've had true capitulation yet here on Bitcoin. It can come lower. And taking a look at this on the weekly, you could see we nearly hit the 200 on the weekly back on Monday, February 2nd during that week. And so let's see if we want to come back down and retest that 200. But Bitcoin is not ready to move yet. Now let's come over and take a look at the Dow Jones Industrial, which was ripping, but it did start to roll over. Got this reversal candle on the 10th, closed below the 10 here on Friday. Another indecision type candle. We have the 50 SMA at 488.36. So watch that as a support. But below that, you do have the 100. And we're sitting right there on that point of control. I'm interested to see if there's rotation out of industrials back into tech at some point. I think we're a little ways away from that. You look at tickers like CAT, you look at ExxonMobil, and they are just pushing higher. IWM, similar type of concept. It looked like it was going to push up and create a new all-time high, but it put in a lower high. So now we have a higher high, lower high double top. You do have the 50 right down here below, but it looks like this could come down to the point of control at 251.13 or even that 100 at 250.40, and below that, we would see a retest of the 200. And a 10% correction on the IWM, if we measure that from all-time highs, 10% would bring us down to about 244.24. I would say that if we break down 10%, we're coming down all the way to the 200, around 13.58%. So just keep an eye on that. And then let's take a look at TLT. We got a ripper on TLT. We filled this gap to the upside. Or no, actually we didn't. We came close to filling this gap to the upside. Let me move this up here. Here's the gap. So we got very close to that on Friday. So you have money flowing into bonds, flight to safety. That's putting some pressure down on yields. So let's see if the bonds continue to get bought up. This is after it rolled over from that head and shoulders pattern. We were sitting in this gap down here where some consolidation was taking place. And then again, looking at the 10-year, what happens when people buy bonds, the yield decreases. And so now that is starting to drop to the happiness of anyone looking to get a mortgage or refinance their mortgage. And then we take a look at the dollar. You do have a funky looking head and shoulders pattern, dropped, retested the neckline. Now looks like it's dropping back down again. You do have a bull candle below the 10. Let's see if this one wants to roll over some more. And then the VIX. Notice that the VIX is putting in higher lows. And the last few times we saw that, we saw a massive spike. Right. So if we go back to October 28th, that was all the way through November 25th. And then we went September 10th through October 17th. So just keep an eye on that. Would not be surprised to see a spike here on the VIX. That could align with the big dump that we get ahead of NVIDIA earnings. And it looks like with these higher lows that it's getting ready to push up. And then we take a look at gold after that all-time high that it put in where it smashed higher. Reversal candle, dropped down, found support off the 50, pushed back up, and really just been moving sideways. This one looks like it wants to roll over too, so just keeping an eye on that. And again, the broader markets across the board, they look like from a technical perspective, they are ready to roll over. It needs to happen if this bull market is going to continue back up. So just be on guard for that. The futures right now are up 3.75 points. And you could see if we hop over here to the 3-minute that they were up significantly around 4:39 a.m., but they gave back all of those gains and back down it went. But this market is just tired. It's exhausted. It's time to come down. And when you start looking at these individual tickers, you see the same exact thing. So let's get into those individual tickers right now. So I'm going to show you some of the trades that I'm watching for this week, one is going to be APLD, because we pushed back up into these highs that we made back on the 16th. We actually took those highs out here on the 28th of January. And now we have a head and shoulders pattern. So I'll be watching for this to roll over. We have room down to the 50 and to the 100. So I'll be looking for a short here. You can see that this thing recently has bounced at the 100, but I will be looking for some short opportunities there on APLD. MU, I don't want to short this thing, but there is a higher high, lower high double top that's come in. Let's see what happens here. There have been some nice scalp opportunities on this, just in and out. So that's why I have it in my day trading category. So I'm going to watch that. I'm just hesitant to short this thing as strong as it has been. And then we take a look at UNH. I really like this response that it had after this gap down on earnings. Now, I do hold this in my long-term portfolio that I'm just sitting on for 15, 20, 30 years. But you can see that it does have some short-term movement potential here over the next few days for some day trades up to the 200 and the 50 around $320. So I will be watching this to see if I could play this to the upside for some quick gains on day trades, watching the short-term resistance here at that 20 EMA 296.68. And then you have that 50 here at 313.18, but there could be some nice opportunities there. And then you have Oracle. This thing has just been pummeled, beat up, smashed, annihilated, destroyed, destructed, whatever you want to call it. You do have head and shoulders pattern here, and it is falling. It got a little bit of a relief bounce here, but I do think eventually this will come down and fill that gap at 127.38 that dates back to last April 22nd. And at this point, I will begin initiating a small position over time that I will be patient with. But I think this is a good company. They are getting pummeled because of their relationship with OpenAI and their investment in that company. So I do think there's a little bit more room to the downside, but I think once there's capitulation, if it could fill that gap, that would be a good entry spot. Now, in terms of a swing trade, we would want to wait for it to get back above that 10, but I do think this is coming down lower, so I'm going to watch that. And then you take a look at Coinbase. Look how far this thing has fallen, and we are actually back below the lows of last April, and that's because Bitcoin has been getting destroyed. Double top, higher high, lower high pattern below all of the stronger simple moving averages here on the daily death cross. But notice we did put in a double bottom, and off of bad earnings report, it actually went higher. Now it is below the 10, but this is one worth watching. Keep an eye on this. You had some nice volume come in there on Friday. Let's see if there's just going to be a dead cat bounce here and it's going to fall more, but I am going to keep my eye on coin. And then Wolf is another one. Really, this has just been range bound, pushing up and down into the 17 price range, coming back down to 10 and just chopping back and forth. Probably more of that's going to happen here, but there has been some positive catalysts around this because they did get upgraded. Now, let's get into the Mag 9, and we're going to start with NVIDIA, the king, who will be reporting on Wednesday, February 25th. Again, I would not be surprised to see this thing dump, get below the 200, and then earnings with the world on its shoulders, it rockets back up. But this has just been sideways. Look at this. Since July 31st, sideways. Yeah, you have this pop here in October, but it really hasn't done much of anything. So let's see if this is just setting up for the next leg up in this bull market, and if it's going to lift tech across the board. But we're going to have to wait until the following week to see what happens. Broadcom, every time that it tries to put back in a run, it gets rejected. It got rejected off the 50 here as of recently. You can see back here on the 4th, it found some support on the 200. We have another gap to fill down here at 254.23, which could happen if things roll over like it looks like they will based on the charts. And you do have this overhead gap here at 394.09. Which one gets filled first? It looks like it's going to be the gap below, especially if we roll over. Tesla really just has been moving sideways after these two big pushes up in September. What is it going to do? I think they're waiting to see, all right, who are we going to tag to run this spring? Is it going to be a Tesla? Is it going to be NVIDIA? We can see the volumes decreasing here on this guy. So NVIDIA earnings will go a long way in determining this, but keep in mind that Tesla typically struggles until May. So I would not be surprised to see this thing come lower. but really just sideways movement here as of late. Netflix continues to fall down, and it looks like it's destined to fill this gap down here at 70.43. And until this Warner Brothers deal is resolved, or if it ends up being Paramount that buys them, we're going to see more downward pressure here. And it's just been a massive fall to the downside, oversold, but eventually this one will recover. I do like Netflix long term, but there's probably more weakness to come along here. And then Microsoft filled the gap here. There's another gap to fill down here to 367.76. Would not be surprised at all if we see that weakness across the board come into the markets, that gap get filled, and then let's see if it could pick up after that. So Microsoft getting pummeled, Amazon getting pummeled. You see the trend here across all these big tech names, but they dropped on earnings. They fell again last week. There's no easing up on the bearish volume. It's oversold. There's a gap to fill at 194.68. Again, it looks like it's probably going to fill that gap first. And there's another gap down here at 177.17. So just keep that in mind. Lots of targets, lots of room for these things to move to the downside. And then Google finally got below the 50, the 10 crossed the 50. You've got the 100 right here, but keep an eye on this gap at 262.38 because that can get filled. And you have another one here at 212.29. Don't think it will get there, but this one is definitely on the table, especially if we continue to see weakness come into the tech market. And then you have Apple, head and shoulders pattern. Looked like it put some strength in here, that it was going to start rallying again on February 6th. But what happened? Boom, it rolled over. It's now below the 50. It's below the 100. It already filled this gap. Let's see. Oh, no, we have a new gap here now, right? So we created this gap here on the 23rd of January, 249.41. Can we fill that one? And we have another gap down below here at 234.53. So again, lots of gaps below. A lot of these charts look like dog. Put the word in here. You know what I'm talking about. And then Meta, after popping on earnings, gave it all back, just dropped down. It's below the 200. It's below the 100. And now it is back below the 50. Now, it still has higher lows that it is putting in, but it needs to do something and do something soon. Or, you guess it, it is going to fill this gap at 548.23. And there's another gap down here at 506.26. So, tech needs to flush. That could happen this week. NVIDIA could save it, but it doesn't look good at this point. And that's just what the charts are saying. A couple more tickers we're going to take a look at here. Roblox, man, this thing has just got smashed since its July earnings. Tried to recover and rebound, but it's just drip, 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 drip. It tried to make a nice little recovery here off its recent earnings. Smack right back down. The bear volume is just pushing. There's another gap to fill down here at 43.46. This is a growth company, and I would not be surprised to see that gap get filled as well. And then you take a look at the trade desk. Let me get these fibs off of here. But the trade desk, you do have a falling wedge pattern that is coming into play, but there's nothing positive around this company. This is just an strong downtrend. Any bounces, any rips can be sold. And there's going to be weakness. Now, they do have earnings coming up the same day that NVIDIA is reporting, but more than likely it'll be nothing burger and it's going to come lower. I'm watching for the $18 mark for the area of support where buyers have to come in, or this company is in extreme trouble. I've been accumulating shares on the downwards movement. If it goes through 18 and continues to drop lower, I will consider closing my shares for a loss, because it's just, it just continues to go down, and there's nothing positive about this company. So that's what TTD looks like. Robinhood smoked on earnings, head and shoulders, coming down for the 100 SMA and the weekly does not look good. It's been moving with crypto. MSTR looks like garbage. I believe if you look at the monthly, is it the monthly I was looking at here? Maybe it was the weekly. Let me see here. The weekly, you got a head and shoulders pattern. So this one could drop more, but just imagine if Bitcoin does get running. Again, there's nothing on the chart that says that's going to happen, but if it does, there is upside opportunity here. So I will continue to watch this one and just be patient. Not saying there's anything here yet. Just keep an eye on it in the event that Bitcoin starts to do something, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. And then let's just take a look at a couple more charts here. Caterpillar just continues to rip. it's nice to see a bullish chart out there in the midst of all these garbage looking charts here that look like death. So shout out to all the Caterpillar bulls who are making some bank off of these moves. This needs a little bit of a retest here, but there's nothing that says it's not going to continue to go up. And then you have ExxonMobil getting a little bit of a retest into the 10. Looks super strong, but you're seeing that rotation out of big tech and out of the growth names into these types of companies. And that probably is going to continue until there is something that comes into play, a catalyst, something positive that makes people want to get back into the big tech space, because we are not seeing that now. And let me see if there's anything else that I want to look at here on the charts. And I think that is it. I'll just take a look at Roku here real fast, because Roku did have a nice move here on earnings, gapped up, but then you could see bloop, sold it down, came back down below the 10, and it looks like it is going to fall more. But again, the charts across the board do not look good. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The charts, the broader markets show that they are tired. They are fatigued. That's just an objective reading of where it is. It does look like it is ready to roll over. But remember, a reset, a big drop creates opportunity, creates value. So all the people out there saying, oh, no, this is falling, it's over. Don't see it that way. Look at it calmly. Look at it objectively, that, hey, this could be a potential big opportunity. And whether that's just a correction, 10% correction, or just a longer bearish market, 9 to 12 months, 2 years, just have a plan of attack on how you will approach it. There are always going to be short-term day trading opportunities. As you can see, I shared what I'm looking at this coming week. But in terms of longer term trades, those bear markets, those corrections provide opportunities. So have the mindset of bring it on, drop it, let's go, push it down. And if it means some short-term pain to your portfolio, that's okay, because these are the opportunities that create generational wealth. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. Do we start the correction this week ahead of NVIDIA earnings? Is NVIDIA earnings the catalyst that sends us back up? I would love to hear that below. And as always, make it a great day, honor the moment, and most importantly, be grateful. Take care, everyone.